The Flash tumbled in the box office this weekend. I'm Rosemary Miller here with Marrisa Dellato, an entertainment reporter here at Forbes. Marrisa, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me as always.
Absolutely. So, Marissa, The Flash, as I said, it tumbled. It did really horribly, coming in at only $55 million its opening weekend. What happened?
Yes. There's a few things at play here. I mean, this movie was set to come out a while ago. It was delayed because of COVID. During that time, its star who plays the Flash, Ezra Miller, was involved in several major kind of legal issues. They had been arrested several times, for throwing a chair at someone, for burglarizing. There were all these very odd, kind of erratic behavior issues. They have since said that they, were experiencing extreme mental health issues, and that was kind of the cause of those things. But there's been a lot of allegations and just concerning things coming from, the star of this movie, who isn't, a household name to begin with. We're also seeing DC kind of trying to really compete with Marvel in this new era of every side character of Marvel doing super, super well. And then DC kind of struggling, particularly when, it's not a Superman, it's not a Batman movie. It's kind of it's not a superhero that I think people have, so much attachment to. Um, you're also having It's also not that great of a movie. The reviews haven't been that great. It's only gotten a 67% on Rotten Tomatoes. Audiences gave it an 85% and also, a B rating on Cinema Score. So, you're taking kind of all this going into it, and then it not being so great. People weren't, jazzed up to see it. As you went through the weekend, its numbers lessened each day. I think it's just people who were curious saw it. They let people know, hey, maybe not the best, and anticipation and excitement dwindled.
So, what about the advanced screenings? Do you think the people who maybe would have paid to see it saw it for free in the advanced screenings, and they're the ones who put out that it was kind of mediocre? Could that have impacted the
Yeah,
movie at all?
exactly. I mean, advanced screenings are really to drum up buzz, to get people to be like, oh my God, you have to commit time this weekend. You have to go on Friday. It's really to help secure those numbers, to get those butts in the seat. And not that, those people who would have paid to see it, didn't. And that's what caused the lack of sales. But it's just that, they weren't super jazzed. That excitement didn't bubble up. And, DC and Warner Bros. Was kind of expecting this. It didn't have huge projections for the movie anyways, and the fact that didn't even beat those, it's that's just what it was.
So,
It's not great.
what about
I'm
the
sorry.
likes for this movie? Will this movie keep going? Is it going to keep going down, up?
I mean, I really don't think anyone's, I think it will just keep tumbling down despite, being number one at the box office. That's great. I know we talked about how hard it is to keep getting number one week after week. And, I don't think this has a chance, especially since so many beloved movies that, you know, they, that's hard to do anyways if you're a beloved movie. But it's not the only movie that took a hit this weekend. Pixar's Elemental, which was number two, also debuted with just about 30,000 domestically. So it's tough overall right now, or at least for those two films at
And
the
so,
top
those
of
two
the box
films,
office.
they're coming at a time where we talked about this last week. Back to back number ones, all these big movies coming out that they just picked the wrong weekend to release these movies.
I think it's just interesting that two movies that didn't have a ton of excitement, behind them, were released at the same time. I think it's more of I don't think it has to do with this weekend in particular. I mean, it was a 3-day weekend. You would think people have even more time to devote to the movies than otherwise. But Pixar has been kind of struggling for a little bit now. I mean, it's been a really long time since there was a Finding Nemo that shocked us all, or a Toy Story. And it's for these kind of newer franchises or newer stories that don't have beloved characters attached to them, it is harder for them to break through in any category. Particularly Pixar has, we haven't gotten that big explosion from them for a while. And Elemental was just another example of that. Audiences did like it. It got an A grade on Cinema Score. So, I think that's something where if particularly this is a family-oriented film, there aren't a lot of family-oriented films out right now. Kids might be talking to each other at camp. They might, or when it comes out on, Disney Plus, we might get some excitement out of it. But is it this big, IP starting franchise? I don't think so.
So, speaking of the franchise, do you think DC is dead? I mean, will this affect the other DC movies that are coming out?
I think it will. I mean, DC has been struggling for a little bit, especially in the wake of Marvel, which is just such a monster in everything that it does in TV, in movies, and DC's kind of in this reorganization, this new period, through what Warner Bros. Is going through. So it will be interesting to see how they're competing and how they start reorganizing themselves and how they start seeing themselves, competing against Marvel. But it wasn't maybe 10, 15 years ago where Batman and Superman were those were the superheroes I grew up knowing, and I didn't know who Thor was. And now, it's completely the other way around. So it's definitely tough going up against Marvel. It's going to be interesting, especially when you have, kind of a dud like The Flash, when you're thinking about how that's going to impact the rest of the universe, how it's going to impact the stories that were told in this, movie of a side character, how they're going to explore that character's evolution, and, really thinking about how Marvel kind of does that really intense universe building. How can DC compete if, certain parts of its universe aren't performing? So it's going to be definitely interesting to see where they go forward, but it's an absolute uphill battle for sure.
So, what's next? What can we look forward to this coming weekend?
Next weekend, we have a lot of fun movies coming out. Um, we have a few more serious summer contenders, like Asteroid City and Past Lives, that do from the real like film lovers community. People are really really excited about those films. We also have No Hard Feelings, the Jennifer Lawrence rom com, which will be interesting to see how that goes. It's definitely a fun one. So it's definitely a little bit more variety. We're not seeing action next week. We're not seeing anything superhero, kind of this very, these intense summer films like we've seen so far. We're going to have some fun ones and maybe some real emotional ones coming up. So definitely a change, and it'll be interesting to see how audiences react to those.
Well, I look forward to talking to you about it next week, Marissa. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining me.
Thank you.